Daf Pei Beis Amud Beis. We'll begin Daf Pei Beis Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the bottom. We learned previously in the Mishnah that the Korban Pesach, which is Yotza, it went outside its mechitzas, or it became Tomei, that it's burnt immediately. The Gemara questioned, how do we know that? So we learned out from Tomei, the pasuk. There was a pasuk by Tomei that says, "V'basar she'iga v'chol Tomei lo yachol be'shisar." But how do we know Yaitse? So the Gemara said we learned it out from the case of the Sorah Chatos on the Yom Shmini Eluim that was burnt, and Moshe Rabbeinu questioned why that was so, and he said, "Hein lo yuves dam el kodesh pnima achal toichlu so b'kodesh kasher tzivesi." And therefore we learned out that he questioned, and he said, well, it's therefore Hein lo yuves dam el kodesh pnima. It did not go outside its mechitzas, implied in that if it does go outside its mechitzas, its boundaries, its yaitze, then it has to be burnt. So, frek the Gemara, bishlam and nitma. What we understand, we learn out that by Tomei the korban became Tomei, it's burned. Only Rachmana because the pasuk that we just mentioned, that is dealing with kachim kala. That pasuk over there is talking about shlomim. Shlomim is kachim kal, and therefore we can learn out to other cases as well. So Goli Rahman b'kachim kalim, kol shekem kachim kachim, and certainly therefore it would apply to kachim kachim. But ela yaitze, but the case by yaitze ashkan b'kachim hakadoshim. That pasuk, the pasuk by Aaron, by Moshe Rabbeinu with Yom Shmini Eluim, that is talking about kachim kachim. That's talking about the Sorah Chatos, and the Chatos is kachim kachim. Kachim kalim minalan. How can you learn out to kachim kalim? So how can you learn out for the Korban Pesach, which is kachim kalim? You can't learn out kachim kalim for kachim kachim. Perhaps it only applies by kachim kachim, but not to the less severe of kachim kalim. Vesu, additionally, on this end you will learn the Bryce Lon Doma, if the blood of the korban was left overnight, or Nishbach Doma, if the blood was spilled. So if it's spilled, and then you can't do the zrika. So therefore, the basar is also to achilo. So, or yotza doma lechus lekloim, or if the blood left out the boundaries, the curtains of the azara, the kaimelan b'sreifa, the halachi is that it has to be burnt. And nolan, where do you know this? How do we know this from? The more answers, nafkalam and Rav Shimon. We learn it out from this Rosh Rav Shimon, the Sanya Rav Shimon, Aimer, Ba'kodesh, Ba'ishti Sorif. It says in the pasuk, "V'chol chatas sher yuva dam el oil moed lechaper b'kodesh lo yisei achal ba'ishti sorif." That any chatas chitzain, where the dam is supposed to be applied to the mizbeg hachitz, if it is brought inside, if it's brought inside to the Kodesh Kadoshim, it becomes possible, and the pasuk says it cannot be eaten ba'esh tisarif, it has to be burned. So therefore, we learn out from over here that since, and this is the way the Korban Aaron learns it, it says v'chol chata sheyuva dama al oil moed. Now the pasuk says lechaper b'kodesh. It could have said, l'chora, it should have said that kol chata sheyuva midam al oil moed b'kodesh lechaper lo yisarich al beish tisarich. But by placing the lechaper b'kodesh after lechaper, close to lo yisarich ba'esh tisarev, so this teaches you that you have to limit al chatas shesrivasa b'kodesh, that it has to be burned b'kodesh, and that this teaches you where if the dam, it was now in the improper place, it went out of his mechitzas, it was brought into the Kodesh Kodashim, it has to be burned b'kodesh. I only know in this case that it's burnt in the Kodesh, in the Azor. Shar psulei Kodesh Kadoshim, psulim of other Kodesh Kadoshim, like a mincha, oila, asham. How do I know the imuri Kadoshim kalim, and the imurim, the parts of the korban from Kachim kalim that are burnt on the mizbeach? Now, when imurim, for instance, you have shlomim, and the parts that halokim that are burnt on the mizbeach, those emurim, even though the shlomim is kachim kalim, but once have done the avodah, and these emurim are to be burnt on the mizbeach. These emurim have a din of kachim because they're burnt on the mizbeach. So how do I know that they more kachim kalim minayin? How do I know that they have to be burnt, and that if they became possible that they are burnt in the azara? Talmud Loimar, the pasuk says v'chol chatos ashayu. It says kol. It says Talmud Loimar v'chol b'kodesh b'eish tisorev. So it's marba these as well. But still, the Gemara, Ashkan Kadosh, I still only found a source, a makar for Kodesh Kadosh. Kadoshim Kalim Minayan. How do I know Kodesh Kalim? So how do I know that from there also that is the same halacha? Now, as Rashi explains, even though we do learn now, we have a official pasuk that by Shlomim that it became Tomei Beish Tisorev, and it says clearly over there that they are burnt, and they're burnt in the Kodesh, but you cannot learn out from Tumah, because Tumah is more Chomer, because even a Tumah will passel Truma and Meiser, so it passels them also from being eaten. So therefore, even though we do have a Makor for Tumah, but we can't learn out from the case of Tumah. So Elo, the Gemara says, in a chanami kol psula b'kodesh b'sreifa, that we say that anything that became possible in the kodesh has to be burned. Loishna kadoshim kalim, loishna kodesh kachim. Doesn't matter if kodesh kachim kalim is gemirila. It's a halacha l'moishim misinai. The chatas to Aaron, and we're not learning out of the case of the chatas Aaron. We're not learning out from the case of the soyer on the Yom Shmini l'Miluim, the soyer of Rosh Chodesh. The Torah relates it to teach us just to relate the Maisa, but the halacha itself that it's burnt is halacha l'Moshe Misinai. Praise the Gemara. Ulatana dvei Rabba Baravu Domar Afilu Pigel Toin Ivo Tzura. He learns that even if it's pigel, that you don't burn it immediately. It has to be left till overnight, and then you burn it only afterwards. You don't burn it immediately. Minolan. Where do we learn this from? Because you would say that pigel, it's a psul begufay. So why should you need iber tzura? Yolif oven minaiser. He has exer shava oven minaiser. Just like nicer is that something's left over overnight to the next day. Here also we learn out to pigel that it's burnt only after it's left overnight. Well, why don't we learn out from the case of Chatas Aaron? There it was burnt immediately. So why shouldn't we learn out from that case? Also say the oven, then say the Gzer Shava over there. That and over there it says by the Chatas Aaron, it says it says oven ha'eda. It'll answer to you Chatas Aaron ki gavna nami ibertzula derzbuli. In such a case, if it would be for future generations, it would require Iber Tzura. In a Chanami, in the future, it would require. Over there, it was an exception. It was a Roya Shah. It was that because of the special day that it was, there was a special halacha, an exception to the regular halacha. There was an exception of the Roya Shah that it was burnt immediately. But he holds that in the future it would not be that way. He holds that in the future it would need Ibrit Surah. Dr. Gemara Hashda Damrina call Psula the Kodesh Besreifu Leishna the Kachim Kachim Leishna the Kachim Kalim Gemara Gemirila. Now that we've established that it's Allah Lamosh Sinai, so therefore why do we need these various psukim? So Bakodesh Beish Tisorev Lamali. Why do we need the pasuk Bakodesh Beish Tisorev? That the pasuk says that Bakodesh Beish Tisorev, that we learned out that Chatas, that's Rifas Bakodesh. What do I need this pasuk for? So more answers how we boil Rifas Bakodesh. It's to teach you, not to teach you that it has to be burnt, but it's teaching you where it's to be burnt. It's to be burnt in the Kodesh. Not that it must be burnt, but it's telling you where it is burnt. Gemara asks, and so now that we said the halacha Moshe Sinai, furthermore, what do we need? The pasuk v'abasar sheyigav chol tomei lo yachal ba'esh yisarf l'amali. What do I need? The pasuk that by shlomim that it became tomei that is burnt in the fire. Our answer is that I need to teach it itself. Now, even though I have the halacha Moshe Sinai, I still need this pasuk because I might have thought called the psula the kodesh. I would have thought that anything that became the kodesh that became posum is kigoin, for instance, lon dama, if the blood was left overnight, or v'nishbach dama, or it's got spilled, or v'yotza dama, or the blood went out of its mechitza, went out of its boundaries, or v'nishchata balayla, it was shafted at night. The besreif, these you have to burn, because I would say dafka these types of things that's lo b'chulin, which don't apply and not relevant to chulin. Aval nitma, but nitma became tomei. Now these are things that do apply. Aval nitma the b'chulin nami mifsa. It also passes chulin. So I might have thought I might have thought that since it was something that it became in Tomei in a way, in the matter of davar sebechol, that affects chol, and therefore it was not treated as in kedusha and didn't have a special kodshim elevation and sanctity, meaning it became tomei that would have even passed chulin. I might have thought that you don't have to burn it, meaning it was not elevated. It was not treated in a way that with the greater sanctity, with the greater kedusha of kachim. It became tomei that affects even chulin, and therefore it's something that doesn't attain that level of kedusha, and that you don't need sreifa v'tiskali b'kura. And I might have thought that burying it is enough. Kura is enough for it. You might not have to burn it. Kamash Malon, it teaches us that by tuma as well, that this halacha applies. This that has to be burnt, even though it's something that also applies by chulin. How does tuma apply by chulin? If a chulin minatayra, if chulin becomes tomei, then you can eat it, and you're not makre of chulin. So there's a different explanation. One explanation is that chulin, if it became tomei, now you can't be makdish. So it cannot be brought to Gedusha. Another pshat is, like the Chayv says, is that when we say chulin over here, we don't mean literally chulin, we mean that it applies to Meiser and Truma. It applies to Truma and Meiser. If Truma and Meiser became tomei, then it's also ba'achila. So it's not strictly speaking a din by kachim. Zok the Gemara weiter nitmu Baal Moshe Masechet ubetzurosan. If the Baalim became tomei or they died, then you don't burn it immediately, but you have to leave it overnight. And but Rabbi Yechon ben Broka says that these cases also they're burnt immediately. Omar Rav Yosef machlekes into Baal machar zrika. He says the machlekes is only if the Baalim became tomei after zrika. So the Baalim became tomei after zrika. So the Chachamim hold, well, it's not a psul in the korban, it's a psul in the Baalim, and therefore you need Ibatzura, you can't burn it immediately, you have to wait till the next day. Rabbi Yechon ben Broka says no, it has nobody can eat it, there's nobody to eat the korban, so we consider it as if it's a psul b'gufay, and therefore he says you can burn it immediately. So that's machlekes, where the Baalim became tomei after the zrika was done. However, we say it's only over there that it's the machlekes, the ischa basar la'achila, because before the Baalim became tomei, there was a point in time when it was roy for achila. Beforehand, aval nitmu Baalim lefnei zrika, but if the Baalim became tomei even before the zrika took place, the lo ischaze basar la'achila, where the meat never became roy fit to eat, because as soon as the Baalim were tomei, and therefore as soon as the zrika was done, at the point when the zrika was to be done, they were already tomei. There's nothing to be matter. The Baalim are tomei, and the zrika cannot be done. There's never a heter achila. Then everyone would agree that's considered to be a psul in the guf hakorban, and you burn it immediately. Basically, I'll ask you a kasha. Zaklal kol shepsul begufay. If there's a psul in the guf of the korban itself, you sarf miyat, then it's burnt immediately. Bedam ubabalim, but if it's in the owners, if the blood, or if in the bailim to uber tsurasa, then you have to wait till the next day. Then after that, the next day v'yetze levesa sreifa, then you take it out to the place of burning. So gatani balim dum. Now it says that if it is a psul in the dam or the balim, then they have this common halacha. So Ketani Balam Dubin the Dam. The owner is similar to the dam. So Madam Lifnei Zrika, by definition, the blood, the psul, the blood is talking about before the Zrika. Because once the Zrika is done, then the korban is kosher. It's not relevant. So the dam, by definition, it has to be, the psul has to be before the Zrika. Balim Lifnei Zrika. So here also we're talking about the psul of the balim. It's talking about before Zrika. And it says it's before Zrika. And it says over here, Tu B'tzur also. So we see over here that there is an opinion that holds that even though it's before Zrika, you need Ibrit Surah. When it says, you must say as follows. Where is the machlokes that's before Zrika? There we say it's davke before Zrika, the leis chazav also lachila. Therefore, in that it's before Zrika, the balsa was never roy lachila, because it's only roy lachila once there's Zrika, and if they're tame before the Zrika, they can't do the Zrika. There's no Zrika to be matir. So there we say that if it's before Zrika, therefore the leis chazav basal achila, the like psul begufa. There it's like a psul begufa, so that's where Rav Yechon Baraika holds it's a psul in the guf. Aval nitmu ba'im la'achar Zrika, but if it's nitnu ba'alim after Zrika, this calls a basal achila, where there was a point in time where the meat could have been eaten, divrakol, psul machos davar acher, everyone would agree that's psul machos davar acher. It's not considered to be inherent in the korban, it's external. Uboy ibu tzura, and everyone would agree in such a case that even Rav Yechon ben Roka would agree that you need ibu tzura. He says no. He says that even after the Zrika, it's also a machlokes, even though the balsa was roy lachila, was a point where it was roy lachila. He says nevertheless, then it's still considered to be a psul begufa, according to Rav Yechon Broka, and their machlokes still applies.